Welcome everybody. My name is Aaliyah.
And my name is Morgan.
And we are When We Speak Fellows, and we're really excited to be here today to introduce When We Speak Vol.7. So we have some housekeeping, which is pretty simple. Essentially, our mics will be on for this conversation so that you can hear this conversation, and we would like to politely ask you all to mute yourselves so that we do not hear any background noise and all that good stuff. We are also recording, and therefore, if you do not want your face to be on our recording, then take your face off by turning off your camera. And I think that is it. We've also got the chat open, and those comments and stuff like that are being monitored. So if you have any questions or any queries, feel free to write them into the chat. So today we are going to explore the relationship between social media, journalism, and misrepresentation, and learn from Shanice on how marketing and branding has hugely influenced gal-dem, a magazine that tells the stories of women and non-binary people of colour. So briefly, I'm going to tell you about When We Speak. And When We Speak is a programme that is run by Toby Moore that is shifting the power balance so that young people can finally take back control. The programme is for everybody, but recognises that systemic oppression plays a part in how possible it is to influence change and allocates resources such as funding in order to create social change and action. So Toby Moore provides learning programs, and these are the programs that are part of it, and it's essentially have those young people doing really cool and amazing things in their communities. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today, Shanice. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
Awesome. So let's just get straight into it, guys. We know a little bit about you, but for those who don't know about you, can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your career journey so far?
So yeah, I think you mentioned my name is Shanice. I'm the social media manager at a media publication called gal-dem. The gal-dem, like you said, we kind of focus on platforming the stories of women and non-binary people of colour. And we do that in a range of ways, really, predominantly through our editorial content that lives on our website, but also we have an annual print mag, but also through other things like collaborating with POC creatives across like various disciplines to kind of spotlight their work, kind of thing that they're doing to kind of transform or lift up the community. In terms of my role, everything social basically, so making sure that all the work that we do, whether it's our news articles or collaborations or brand work or just internal projects that we have, making sure that people are able to find out about them, share them, join in and participate in whatever way suits them.
Amazing, amazing. That sounds so much.
So much.
Yeah. Wow. And social media, why social media? You're the social media manager.
Yeah.
Amazing. So why social media?
Yeah, I think for me it's an interesting one. I kind of fell into social, so I graduated in 2014, I think, and it's weird, like at that time obviously social media was already a massive thing, but I think it was becoming more of a thing for businesses and brands. Like it was becoming clear that this is a useful tool for you to use whatever field you're in, whether you're a bank or whether you're a community, like you're a plumber or something like that. Like everybody can benefit from social media on a personal level and on a business level. So for me, I studied journalism. I very early on in that degree realised the industry as it was, or as I was kind of being inducted into it, wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of. But what I did take from that course was a real love of storytelling. I think that's always been in me. And I think when you think about social media, it is a storytelling tool, whether you're kind of projecting to your friends and your family what your day's been and what your week has been, you're telling a story. When you're putting out an article on social media, you're telling a story and inviting people into a bigger story, you're just positioning it in a slightly different way. And I think that was really exciting to me. And then when you kind of look at the digital world and the tech world, the innovations that are constantly happening make it quite an exciting field to be in. So yeah, all of those touch points made it like very clear for me that that's something I wanted to be involved in my day-to-day life.
So on that note, how have you and gal-dem sort of use social media to build brands?
Yeah, I think it's definitely played a massive role in our journey and our progression. I think we started out as students, most of us were kind of in our second or third year of uni or early years of work. So basically we had no budget to put behind something to be able to like create something physical potentially and distribute it. So social media was a massive part of that. And I think it just enabled us to kind of build a community, to be able to reach people who had the same kind of passions and interests as us, or who wanted to kind of be more in tune or see their experiences reflected in media where they weren't seeing that already. So I think social media in general is amazing for like making people able to find the people or the causes that resonate with them, and that's definitely.
So on that, I was just going to say, what is your social strategy and how has that shifted in the last 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's always changing, to be fair. I think when we first started, it was all about kind of raising awareness of who we were. And we kind of did that with a few like campaigns. So one, which is really like, it's quite embarrassing when I think about it. The title was called 60 Sassy Days. And it was basically the lead up to our launch. So we didn't have a website at that point. We didn't really have, we had branding, like we had a logo, we had a name, but we didn't have any content to share.
Yeah.
But we wanted to use social media to kind of pull in a crowd despite not having a digital presence as such, and to be able to say, these are the things that we're going to talk about, this is what we're about. So we would pick something every day, whether it was like an illustrator, a creative that we loved, or someone like a cultural icon, or a song, or like, I remember getting pictures from a festival of POC people who looked amazing out, like just picking something to celebrate every day. So even though we don't have a website, we were using that to kind of grow our audience and people who were already in tune with the types of things that we were. So that was one way, that was like one strand of our strategy very early on. But now it's less about raising awareness of who we are, but more so just staying very in tune with our audience. I think a lot of times people are really focused on growing their followers, and it's not about that. That's the very beginning of the relationship. There's no point having X amount of followers if they don't care about you. I follow hundreds of pages. I can, like, probably 80% of them, I don't know what they are. I don't remember. I don't see the posts. They don't, like, come into my mind at all. Only every now and then when they slip through the algorithm, and I'll see something. But I think the point about building an audience or building a community is making sure that it's actually a relationship that you're fostering, and that you're strengthening, and that's kind of what our focus is at the moment.
That keyword relationship.
Yeah, 100%. Before when I asked you a question about studying and stuff like that, you mentioned you studied journalism, and you was able to find the silver lining that journalism wasn't what you wanted to go into. Can I just maybe explore that a little bit? What did the landscape look like? What did it feel like?
Yeah, I can't quite pinpoint exactly what it was, but I think, so there was a question on the course. I remember this one like seminar or something where it was like, is journalism a window on the world? And I think we had this long debate, and basically it should be, journalism should reflect the world that we see, but then it ended up being, it is a window on the world, but it's a very small window with a very limited view. The person on the other side is kind of choosing what they can see and what they can't see. And that to me was my problem. Like when I was looking through magazines or in the news, the kind of stories I was seeing didn't reflect the kind of things that I cared about. And I think that's kind of like a general theme for a lot of people who either work at gal-dem or read gal-dem. There was something missing, and in terms of me at that time, feeling like I didn't feel like, I can go into this industry and change it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of just like, you know what, I don't want to do this, let me find something else. And I did that, but then at the same time, I have come back into journalism, but through a different route, through a route that suits me and that is able to tackle the problem that I had with the industry to begin with.
Amazing. And throughout your career, have you experienced any racial microaggressions?
So I think I definitely have. I've been in environments So when I graduated, I kind of went into marketing first.
Okay.
I was at creative agencies in Bristol, where I studied, and you know, you're working with. I don't know if you know much about creative agencies, but it's kind of like ad agencies, where they're putting together the adverts that we see. They're working with these huge clients. The budgets are huge. Like the projects, the work is fun. Like it was interesting, and I learned a lot. But I did also learn that despite these people, they speak a lot about psychology and human interaction. There was this huge blind spot where it's like, do you not realize that like people of color or LGBTQ communities are also your audience? Like they're interested in products too, but that wasn't kind of happening. So I had incidents at work where like my manager came in like head to toe, blackface one day, like all sorts, and then other things, just the way certain colleagues interacted with me, just really odd experiences that I know aren't uncommon. I'm glad to now be able to work full time in a company where that's absolutely not an issue.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Like, God, are we naming and shaming? Oh, no. What you said in your bio that it mentions that you've done voluntary work. Just wanted to know what sector that was in. Was it activism? What was that like?
It was more so like community based. So when I was at uni, I worked. I did some. So when I was like journalism isn't for me, I was like kind of panicked and was like, I need to find what is for you then. And one thing I think there was a student paper, not the official uni paper, there was another paper, and I volunteered to kind of handle their social media for them. So I did that, and then I also worked at a community radio station, which was really great. I wasn't a host or anything, but I was like behind the scenes researching, and we did a lot of cool work with a lot of different community groups in Bristol. So I remember we having guests involved in the FGM or providing support for sex workers, and we had a lot of like powerful conversations, and I really appreciate that space because for me at uni I wasn't really around many people who had much involvement in social issues, or there wasn't much space for me, or that I found to kind of tap into that type of thing. And I think that space kind of grew my interest in issues outside of my own experience.
So important.
Definitely. And so in the current climate that we're in today, I'm interested to know how you decide what stories to cover. And also just a follow-up question on my own. How do you also keep up with the ever-changing world and make sure that you're covering not 2 weeks later or when there's something else going on?
That's a good question. I think, so for us at gal-dem, we are a small team. Our editorial team, I think we have 5 editors, and they don't all work full time, so a few of them will do 3 days a week or 4 days a week. Obviously the news is non-stop, so and it feels like, especially these last few months with the pandemic, with the kind of surge in the attention to the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been a lot going on that has affected our communities, as always, to be honest. But I think we've had to be mindful of the fact that we aren't a BuzzFeed, we aren't a BBC, we can't cover everything. So what we do try and do is fill the gaps. We try and think about whose voices aren't being heard right now. So even if there is a topic that we're covering that is topical and is being widely covered by every other publication, there will be spaces or people's voices who aren't being invited into that discussion by mainstream platforms, and that's where we try and step in there.
Yeah, so you mentioned the pandemic, the surge of, Black Lives Matter. What sort of like social movements have you and gal-dem been most proud of to support?
I don't know if it'd be tricky to pick one.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it is important. For me, there are certain causes that feel closer, like Black Lives Matter, for example. But then I'm really proud of the work that we do to kind of support trans communities. I feel like a lot of trans communities in the mainstream media are getting a lot of negative and quite insidious coverage right now. So any kind of content that we can put up to be like, this isn't acceptable, is really important. And then I think similarly. Anything to do with identity, I think so many of us, to not have your identity recognised or your feelings around it validated can be so detrimental. So I'm quite proud of the fact that people, whatever they identify as or whatever their background is, they feel like they have a space outside of what the mainstream says is valuable or not to come and share.
So important. Yeah, definitely 100%. So I've got another question. Do you believe social media has accentuated racist behaviours more or brought awareness to social racism in society?
I think it's both, honestly. I think it is impossible to, pretend that social media does not have its downsides. And I think part of that is the feeling of like anonymity. I know that comes out a bit awkwardly, but the feeling that people get when they feel like they're online, they can say whatever they want, they can see other people saying certain things and it emboldens them.
That's literally what they are.
Exactly. And it's, it's easy to say a term like that as but they're also very dangerous. I think when people see certain attitudes and feel like, oh, this is a thought I'm allowed to have, this is a thought I'm allowed to share, and then it comes offline. It can be really dangerous, but I do also see value in social media providing a space for people to have conversations about race or giving them language or an understanding of topics that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
So I know that kind of when I was at uni, I was experiencing things. Maybe it was all at work for microaggressions, not quite the blackface, but some other behaviours that I was seeing in my colleagues. I didn't quite know what that was, or I couldn't quite pinpoint why I felt uncomfortable with that interaction. But it was my activity online, discussions about, things like what a microaggression is.
Yeah.
That kind of helps.
There were so many that you could share on the story. I was learning more about microaggressions. I was like, I had that and that said to me, or what that said to me.
Yeah. I think it does kind of, because I think for people of colour or anyone who's in a marginalised community, yes, you have a lived experience where you kind of learn about what it means to be a person of whatever background kind of travelling through the world. But then there is also a lot that you don't know instinctively and you kind of have to learn, which is a shame because it's, you have to kind of teach yourself like, oh, this is what I can expect in certain spaces, or this is what I have to be on the watch out for when I'm interacting with certain people who might be ignorant or who might not have ever interacted with a black person or a person of colour or a queer person. Like, this is what I can expect to come up against. You always have to arm yourself with that knowledge to get you through it or to help you understand or to process it. So I think social is important for that. And I think it's like a balancing act almost,
So have you watched The Social Dilemma?
I haven't actually. I know what it's about. I started it, and then I think it was been a long day, and I was like, I'm done with social for today. I don't want to hear any more about Twitter and Facebook and all that.
The intro is scary. I watched 10 minutes and I did fall asleep, but it's scary, isn't it?
It is, and I kind of know what it's about, and I think it is important for conversations to be had about like the wider implications of social media. I think we've been doing that anyway. Like, we know that like mental health for a lot of people has been impacted by social media, but also to get into what data, like the implications of that. I think a lot of us, or all of us, or many of us, I speak for myself, me for sure, like I'll tick boxes like consenting to things that I really feel consenting to. And even if you are aware, it doesn't mean that you're not affected by, I don't know, being like influenced to buy or to spend more, or certain things that they decide to do with the algorithm that does kind of feed in. So I think it's important that people have that documentary to watch and to be aware and a bit mindful of as they kind of log in and keep using the platforms. Or
they call it surveillance capitalism, isn't it? I think that's what they were referring to as, and we live in a society, so the fact that social media is just getting bigger, then it just, I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Exactly, it's a powerful tool, and that means that it's always going to be like able to be corruptible or used for not so like what's the word? Used for more like negative purposes. I suppose that's not the best way of putting it. But yeah, I think because it is so powerful and influential amongst us, like personal use, like transform the way I would like connect with my friends. So that means it's transformed the way I connect with strangers. That means it's going to transform the way I connect or operate with businesses or people trying to sell me things or influence certain behaviors.
It's like the other day I saw something, it was like, when you don't have to pay for it, you're the currency, and I said, look, I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah, literally, so it's really interesting. I think the use of how people and businesses, massive corporations use that should be widespread. I'm always like, the first like, no cookies for me.
But then sometimes like the websites you're on, they don't allow you to use it.
Well, then I'm not supposed to be on it, and it's a sign.
I need this website. It's not going to wait me ticket.
It's a point now where we rely on it. It's almost like you kind of, well, yeah, you're kind of there's a temptation, or just it feels a bit natural to just ride away.
It's so bad, though. I think it's so bad. I think that's something we should really start protesting.
The next one.
Okay, so my next question is, in the midst of fake news and misinformation, how can we really use social media for the good?
I think you mentioned earlier like infographics on social platforms, and it is interesting how it has now become a tool for learning. Like at one point people would kind of use social as a platform solely for entertainment, or just to see, like Instagram for example, you want to see like aesthetically pleasing images, but now people are going there to learn like theory and academic information and that kind of thing. So I think it just goes back to the internet being about like checking your sources and not just taking what you see as face value. So say you see a really great infographic, even if it does have all the references, that's the start of your learning.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the only thing you consume on the topic.
And that's the problem. A lot of people are saying, I read that Instagram, so I now know everything there is to about, microaggressions, for example.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just surface level.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it can be a useful first step. It's great that these things make certain things more accessible to people. But I think it does have to just be like the first step in a series of many. But yeah, I think that's something that we need to kind of change and maneuver through society, the way that we engage with information online.
100%. I think I know what an infographic is, but for those who don't know, and all the other delightful dyslexic people, just for those who don't know, tell us what infographics are.
So essentially, shall I give it to you or shall I go?
Yes.
I mean, you are saying
I'll add.
So my understanding of an infographic is kind of like in the name of having like a graphic, a picture, and then having, information that's almost condensed in order for you to understand.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. Just something, a bit of text that's made a bit more digestible. So it might be a bit briefer, or might use the imagery to kind of illustrate the points, or to even just like make it a bit more decorative, because that can help. Like I definitely am more inclined to read something where that's not just a wall of text staring at me. I'm sure a lot of people are the same, but yeah, they've become really popular over the past year or so, which is quite a shift for platforms that were initially meant to be about like pretty images and now becoming about words and text-based things. So that's interesting.
So pretty and bite-sized.
Literally.
Sounds like a bit of a
Okay, so now exploring the deeper importance of representation in journalism / influences. Another question comes to, how do we deliver a social message / create impact? Also to chuck in there, you spoke about engagement. So you having that relationship between those that are delivering information, but also the audience.
Yeah, I
Big
think
question.
it is. I think the main thing is having a strategy. I think it's so easy to set up a platform. We could do it right now in about 2 minutes. We could have a new account on every platform that we wanted to. And I think that's great. And I think a lot of people, when they have an idea, or they want to kind of launch a platform with a certain vision in mind for it, it can be easy to just get going. But I think it's really important to stop and think about, what do I want to do with this? And how am I going to do it? Because there are certain rules to social media. Not that they have to be followed all the time, but sometimes it is easier. So Instagram, for example, apparently they favour, or previously they might have changed it now. Apparently the algorithm favours seeing a face. So
Wow, I didn't know that.
so if you're putting a lot of text on a post, not to say that your post will get no engagement, and not to say that it won't have any success, but apparently the algorithm does prefer faces, which makes sense considering like the origins of Instagram, what was meant to be selfies and pictures of you and your friends or whatever. So there's things like just be mindful of that. You don't have to stick to that and use it as gospel, but it's useful to be mindful of certain things. You might know that and choose, you know, I'm gonna still do every post will be a text post, and that's fine. But I think just figuring out like how will I deliver this? What do people want to know, for example? How do they like to receive this information? Again, if you're going to do a text post, will it be difficult to consume? If it's really heavy, if you do a carousel post of 10 and every one of them has a lot of text on it, depending on your topic, that might be fine, but that's when you have to kind of think and put the reasoning behind the choices. So I think really think about what you want to do, how you want to do it, and know that social media consistency is really important. So if you're going to start a platform, if you're going to start your strategy and roll out your content plan, make sure it's something that you can actually do consistently and commit to, I suppose. Yeah.
Love it. So consistency, knowing the rules, the strategy.
And then finding your community as well. Again, not focusing on the followers, you know, you can buy followers and all that, but what's the point? It's empty. They're not going to engage with you. So I think engagement is huge, because one thing that sets social media apart from other marketing tools or practices, like I don't know, emails or leaflets in your like letterbox, you can get the direct feedback. You can ask a question. You can say, what do you guys want more information about, or what do you not know but think you could do knowing about? And then you can get an answer, and that can be your content. That can go into your strategy. You don't have to just know. You can simply ask and get a response. Even if 2 people reply to you, that's enough. And I think that's more valuable content, because you kind of know that there is an interest in it, rather than guessing or just you deciding on your own. So just things like that.
I think consistency. I never realised how much social media was a job. Like I used to make fun of these people on social, trying to get a real job. That used to be me. Not anymore. I'm progress. But for me, running my own platform, so I have a community interest company that supports vulnerable young women, and I started feeling really responsible, because mine was uplifting some tools, tips and tricks. And then obviously my audience now, sometimes people message me with quite disturbing cases, which obviously makes sense because I'm supporting vulnerable young women. And I started to feel really responsible and got really overwhelmed. So my question to you is, how do you take care of your mental health whilst doing this job and with consistency? The demand is so fast over. How many posts do we see a day? I don't even know. Like, so how do you, I just have to, I know what I do, but how do you take care of your mental health?
I think it is a tricky one, and like I mentioned, even for people just as casual users of social media, we know it has a negative mental health implications for a lot of people. Exactly, yeah. And I think it's tricky. I think for me, in terms of the responsibility to our community on gal-dem. So like I said, with COVID and with BLM, we knew that a lot of our community was suffering. People were scared, people were confused, people were really feeling it, and we felt like, okay, this is what can we put out, like all these infographics, should we be doing infographics? How can we teach people? What can we do? And I think it was felt, not just me, but widely the team. And we had a conversation. We had to be like, we can't do it all. Like I said, we're a small team, we're not a BuzzFeed, we can't put out listicle after listicle, no shade to BuzzFeed. But we just had to acknowledge that we can only do so much. And I think people knew that, you know, the pressure wasn't coming from the audience. Nobody was tweeting us saying, why you missed this? Why did you? It was purely from ourselves, and we just have to have a moment where you're like, look, maybe if you have a strategy, like you've got a plan, you're working on it, it's not going to be a quick thing. You can't just click your fingers and have said everything, we posted 20 times about everything. So I think it is just kind of reminding yourself you can only do so much. I think the news cycle, it's never ending. You can't cover everything. You can't say it all. So I think just take that pressure off yourself and log off. Like, I think logging off is great. Like if you were to look at my own personal platforms, it's dead. Like I barely post, and some people can do it.
Yeah.
Some people, I have a lot of respect for people who are like culture commentators. You know, something happens in the news, I've got a thread out. I personally don't quite have the energy for that.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for people who do, just because for me to work on the platforms all day, it is a lot. Like, it's a lot. You're consuming a lot of opinions, you're consuming a lot of negativity and heavy things, amongst the good, you know, needs help. Like, but at the end of the day, there is, even if it is a lot of light-hearted opinions, still to consume. Thought after thought.
Your brain must be like.
You don't need that. I don't need to, even if it's pictures of people's day, like, lovely.
Yeah.
Let me focus on my day.
Yeah.
So, in short, I think just acknowledge, like, that you can only do so much.
Yeah.
If you've got a strategy, you know, if you're seeing a gap in your strategy, like for me, if I'm like, well, maybe we do need to implement more listicles because people are interested in learning, I can factor that in and have it as part of like a 3-month goal.
Yeah.
But to try and be like, that's part of 5 listicles or infographics this week, it's not realistic and it's not a like conducive way of life.
Amazing. And how do you develop a voice on social media? You know what I mean? Even your name, like gal-dem, like it's not really. I always say it as gal-dem.
Yes.
Because I mean that's where. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where it kind of derives from. It's like, I don't make it tick.
Smile on my face and myself. Like, I love Gritty. Don't know what they do, but I love Gritty for that. Months ago when I first started to brand.
Yeah, years ago when I was just like, yeah, maybe.
I think from the start, because we were like, you know, young, we were just like finishing uni or early in our career, the brand is built around familiarity. We're not trying to be the BBC, we're not trying to be impartial. We say what's wrong, we have no problem not being impartial, making our stance very clear. And I think once you set out a brand like that, where you're embedding your values in it very clearly, then it's quite easy to like be familiar, because at the end of the day, I am the audience almost. Like, if I wasn't part of gal-dem, I would be following gal-dem. So I'm speaking to someone else the other day who managed a social platform, and they were like, when you write a caption, write like what you want to read, like what you want to see as you're scrolling down your feed. That's the kind of tone, like what you find funny. Chances are the team will find funny, the audience will find funny, like not everything. But like,
just being
playful, being playful. I think social media as well, when you look at what the platform is, it's not a platform for brands and for companies. It's where people go, even when people are learning, they're not going to websites. They're going to this platform because it offers it in a different way. So you may as well tap into that and use it rather than, you know, feeling the pressure to elevate or speak differently or present. I don't know.
I think the word that stands out for me that I guess aligned with my brand as well, which is authenticity, be authentic.
And people appreciate that. I think social media is funny. Like, obviously with influencers, there was a period where everyone wanted a perfect feed and your images have to line up this way and you have to stage your props, and people are moving away from that. They say now stories, so stories which tend to be much rougher, kind of more thrown together. That type of content has actually surpassed grid posts. And I think we are moving away from wanting to see polished all the time, because it doesn't feel authentic, like you said.
We know it's not real. We know the reality. We know it took you hours, but put that in that position.
So even when it comes to like, you know, selfies, I think if you want to post like a super polished selfie, fine. But I think, or I hope that there's less pressure now to have to feel like your grid is only for your best pictures, where you're most. You can post whatever you want, as long as it like fits in with you or your brand or whatever it is.
I don't know if we said that we was going to put questions out to Zoom, so just wondering if we had any.
Feel free to ask some questions in the chat.
Shanice every day, and
I know.
she's been dropping some gems already.
I've been going on. I had my own question. I should have like written it down.
No, I was just like, so interested in what you were saying about that, just developing the voice. Because I feel like people just feel the need to
Be someone else.
Yeah. Oh, you'd like to be so-and-so here, but that may just be so-and-so's natural voice.
Right.
Some people, it's so funny, I had this girl in school when she was really younger, and she used to really annoy me when I was in school. She's like, I just want to be you. And I thought, oh, what? First of all. But like, just being yourself, like, you don't realize how many people want to go to your main inspiration, or like, oh, let me see her caption, or Googling the hottest caption, or something I just listened to. Like, we've all done it, but just being yourself is good enough. I think that's a self-talk you should have.
It's true. And even with bigger brands, like I think at one point it was kind of viewed like your website is like your shop window, almost. But then your social should be like have a bit more soul to it. And you don't want it to be a replica of the content you put on your site.
I think people tend to go to social media before they even go to their website.
Yeah, and nowadays, because we have so much choice, even when it comes to like anything, like say ice cream, Ben and Jerry's are super vocal on their social channels about the cause of those people and what they believe in, calling people out. It's an ice cream brand, you know, they don't have to do that, but I'm sure they see people because they feel aligned to what they're saying, they're more inclined to pick up that product maybe. So it benefits everybody, even, you know, hopefully they're not coming at it from a place of this will sell more, but more so the case of we have this platform, let's use it properly. But I think you do see benefits in terms of people like really aligning with that and wanting to remain a customer or whatever.
I don't know how true it is, but at one point I was kind of told that the reason their prices are so high is because they want to pay prisoners or or people that have come out of prison. They want to pay them good enough so they can be on their feet and stuff like that. So I was just like, and then when I saw them really being vocal about actual issues, I was just like, listen, I'm going to pay the £5 for the ice cream. I paid £5 that I don't want to venture. So actually amazing.
So we've got some questions. And so one of them is, does gal-dem have any internships / work placements?
So we did last year, we launched an intern scheme, which is really exciting for us. It ran, we had 3 interns within 3 months each, and that was amazing. It was really great to have them in. But at the moment, that's ended. We don't have one live at the moment, but I'm sure we would do it again. So,
does anyone on Zoom have any questions? Just feel free to just add them in there as we're answering these questions, just what I get then.
Another question we have is, what advice would you give to a student who's looking to go into journalism and media?
I think pitch, just get experience, even if you just have a blog or just get your work out there or start writing and then pitch. We've got guidelines on our site on how to pitch, the kind of topics, and make sure that you're kind of writing about things. Again, looking for gaps in what these publications aren't putting out already. I think right now, hopefully publications are trying to do better and take note of like actually amplifying other voices. So yeah, I think that's a good time.
Another question that just pops into my head on that note, when it comes to especially being, coming from sort of unrepresented backgrounds, put it that way, that aren't normally given opportunities to write on platforms and stuff like that. When it comes to sort of being commissioned and things like that, how do people, from my experience, I've been asked to write, and then you just get asked to write and then you write. But then I've also had companies say, oh, we're commissioning you. How do you, especially young people, I say, how would you advise them to sort of navigate, getting paid for their work? Because their work is valuable, especially if they're someone of colour as well. They can often just be, we take from you and nothing's kind of coming back. So how would you, I know that's a weird question, but
I would be surprised if like big publications weren't paying. I think they definitely should pay.
I mean,
not at all.
I've had that personally, and it's just like, I I know there's other people that have also wrote for them and they're like, oh yeah, I got paid. And it's like, oh, again, it's one of those ones. Most of the time, people don't expect to get paid because they're doing it because they enjoy it. That's what I mean, especially as young people. Like I write because I enjoy writing and I don't expect to be paid for it. But when you think, especially as you know, you get older, like this is your time. You know, you've got jobs, you need to pay bills, you know, like things like that. So
no, I think always ask what is the fee, or
do you
give
have
them your rate. Yeah, expect to be paid. I would say. I think it sounds like people will take advantage if they can, but just kind of be aware of the fact that no, it's work. Like you've got labour into this, and especially if they're approaching you, that means that they value what you're saying or already have the impression that they want and what you can provide. So definitely, and then also have the choice to say, oh, I'll turn it down if you don't want to do it for free, or if you know that you can take it elsewhere, somewhere else that will pay. So don't be afraid of saying no.
That's such a good thing because I think sometimes it can almost be framed as like an opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's
That's
going
it.
you'll see
Pay
very
bills,
sharp.
yeah.
And that's situated. So I thought I'd just ask that.
Also, as well, I'd love to just touch again on strategy and how is anybody else got any questions? No, nothing. How do you develop strategy? Because I think right now I'm at a stage where I'm learning words for things.
Right.
So I have this super cool idea, like Emma will probably tell you it's totally cool. There was a stage where I was like, oh yeah, just posting cool things with random different pictures. We've got to about 36 postings and I just delete everything. Take that down.
Yeah.
Now, if you go on the sheet page now, you can see structure, you can see this, you can see that. And then probably speaking to you, you'll probably be able to maybe depict some strategy out there and what you maybe thought I was thinking about.
Yeah.
How can they, when they have a social media platform, how can they go about developing a strategy? How do they know what strategy is? How do they, I know sometimes polls are doing stuff like that, but if you have an audience that is just not responsive to you at the time, you know?
I think you have to start again, always go down to like what your mission is, what you're trying to do, and then think about how you're going to do it. So when I say how you're going to do it, it means what will that physically look like? If on Twitter you want to put out a series of polls, asking questions every day, that is a content strategy. If you say, every day I'm gonna wake up, check the newspapers, see what the story is, and then start a conversation around that on my feed, then that's a strategy. That's something that you're gonna do consistently. You set a timeline, you know what you're gonna do, and that's gonna become something that ideally you can build an audience around who will appreciate that opportunity to jump into that conversation. Similarly, I think a good way to do it is just thinking about where you're going to get your inspiration from. Again, the news is a good place to start if you're building something around topical content, or if your platform is about uplifting people, maybe you can platform a person every day as someone doing something like that. That's amazing. That's a content strategy because I think that's the content. I think a lot of time people forget that content is really important, but they don't really understand. Like, I guess it's just seeing the posting, but you're posting content. So thinking about what, and then looking at what works. So you might choose to platform somebody every day. Can you see a trend in what's working? Is there a certain type of person who people seem to be more engaged with? Even if there is, you might still want to deviate. You might see that more famous people get more engagement. Or you might say, actually, there are some really amazing community leaders doing brilliant work. They're not as known, but I want to uplift them anyway. So maybe you can choose to do that in a different way. Maybe you can get many interviews with those people because they're more accessible. Whereas you can't really get interviews with, say, you spotlighting at Beyonce. So by being able to recognize like what's working, what's not, it doesn't mean you have to scrap the plan, but you just kind of exactly, come up with a different approach.
And I've also like discovered like the free tools that we have. I know that like big organisations, there's like all these, you know, analytical stuff that you can like look at. But on like Twitter, for example, you just like got analytics, and then it's done for like the business page. Insights. So you can kind of see the trend. Like with Twitter, it's really good because you can see like your engagement. Although I don't know what like engagement is another word. Impressions. So you can see like which one's got the most impressions, and day to day, how it fluctuates, and it's really interesting when you.
It's true. So we put in a lot of work recently on like our reporting. So just measuring what's working, what's not. It's a massive like table. So someone in the team, Sophia, our commercial assistant, she'll spend like the whole Monday putting all this information together. We'll go through it for an hour and then I'll present it to the team for another hour. It's a lot of work. But even if you don't have a lot of that time to put into the sheet, just be mindful, maybe on a Sunday, you can look back at all your posts that week and say, oh, this one did really well. Was it the time that I posted it at? You post that go at 9 a.m., do better than ones that go at 6 a.m. And looking at things like that, or certain captions, people love when I do long captions, short captions, or even if you're just observing, it doesn't have to be this big written out thing, but just kind of pay attention to what people like as well as asking. And then I think something else that's a part of strategy is knowing, so with platforms that are more visual, how are you going to do that? Like, I think a lot of people at one stage were kind of curating a feed, so they were kind of seeing other people's images and using them. Obviously, that's fine to do if you're crediting people, asking permission. We will always ask permission from any creative work that we want to platform on gal-dem. But also, if you're someone who wants to create your own posts, you don't have to use Photoshop or the Adobe software. That's really useful. But there are free softwares like Canva or PicMonkey or whatever it is, where you can put together some very clean, very good looking like infographics. They'll give you tons of templates. That's also something that should be a part of your strategy. How am I going to visually build this post from the caption to the image that people will actually see?
So I think we'll just end it with one more question, unless there's some more in the comments. And I guess it would just be, what is your sort of hopes for the future of journalism? It is a big question. Maybe your personal kind of hopes for.
I don't know. I think the skeptic in me from my studying days around the journalism industry still very much does exist. I think a lot of the mainstream publications are still catching up. They're doing great now in terms of platforming more Black stories, for example, especially right now after BLM. But I think there are still massive grey areas and gaps or behaviours that they get away with and they shouldn't. So
how do you feel about that? Because I definitely noticed, especially straight after protest and stuff, now you're seeing people that wouldn't before, and this hasn't just appeared overnight. This has been happening.
And it's been raised as an issue plenty of times.
So now why is it? Not all people, maybe some people have had a sudden awakening.
Yes.
Fair enough. Yeah. We accept that, but I guess it's just that sort of sense of how genuine is it, and
I
don't think that's harsh to say. I don't think everyone's intentions are necessarily.
No, I agree with you, and I think time will tell. We'll see how long it lasts, and again, it's interesting to know not just what they're putting out, but are they making changes behind the scenes? Are they making changes to their staff teams or to their senior leadership teams? What does that look like? It's not always about the output, because the change has to happen within the ranks and within the institutions themselves. And I think that's the kind of key indicator. But I am excited. There are lots of, I think what's amazing right now is that people have the tools and the passion to not wait for these institutions to catch up. You guys, you've mentioned your projects, that sounds amazing. The fact that a lot of young people or people in general can decide there's something missing and I'm gonna exactly. I think that's really amazing. And then there's other publications similar to gal-dem who are doing amazing work, like Amalia, Black Ballads, so many of them, and that's because again they just were moved to act, and people have responded to that because it's needed.
One more thing, sorry, not to undermine you. What's next for gal-dem, and how can people get involved? Journalists, how can people like you? How can people?
What is next for gal-dem? So I think. So we recently launched a membership scheme, which is where people are able to become a member, which is we've got 3 tiers where you're able to kind of contribute to us. I think at the moment we are kind of we're funded by our investors, but also through projects that we do with brands, but we kind of would love to be more powered by our audience, which gives you a lot of freedom, basically. I think what's also good to mention is that we have memberships that have been donated, so people, instead of just getting one for themselves, are able to give them out, and we really want to give those to young people who might not be able to commit to paying monthly. We've got a good few hundred, so I'll share soon, like tomorrow, the link to kind of sign up to receive a donated membership, because that's something that we've got to offer to young people who want that. Yeah, I think
So exciting.
that's the main thing. Thank you.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The journey's great. Amazing.
Thank you.
I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I think we should have some sort of hashtag or something where people can just let us know on social media what their thoughts were. I don't know, creativity. What I know that's a question. Maybe not a hashtag. Just tag in 24 and gal-dem just to let us know like what your thoughts were. I'm looking at the screen, can't see anybody's faces, but I know you're out there somewhere.
Well, thank you guys.
Keep
Thank
safe.
you guys.
Bye.
Bye.